start to wake up that we're actually something more than we think we are. Who am I? Who is the Father? And begin to be restored, which is to ascend back to my original condition and be able to walk like Jesus according to the Spirit. So he came to reveal God the Father, but also to reveal me to me as a son of God, as we are all sons. We start as children and we grow up and become sons. Maturity in the Spirit. In the darkness, surrounded by darkness, came to his own, they received him not, because they didn't recognize the day of their visitation. And even us, we get into a form where we go, well, this is what it looks like, and we're waiting for something we've seen before. I've been in 4 revivals. I'm in the 4th one now. In my lifetime. Sounds crazy, right? But the first one was in the 80s in Stratford. I connected, that was started for me. It started in the 70s. I met John Arnott in 1981, and it all was exploding at that time. He writes about it in a book. And then we went and planted a church in Toronto, and John moved to Toronto, and that whole thing exploded in 1994, and we were all part of that, going down there, like Larry talks about, being a part of an awakening, and powerful things that were beyond us. And then I went to Lakeland through my body. All night, I could feel this through my body, right? And I went, oh yeah, this is real. In that moment, the Spirit of God, the same one that was moving through Todd, will move in that moment.
Yeah.
And touch you. And it's natural for him. It's just us from a fallen state, right? And then when he started speaking to me in 2006 about the awakening, after I came back from Costa Rica, from another near-death experience, that's when I began to enter into probably the greatest awakening I've had, other than in 1978 when he ripped the veil open and spoke to me. But he just came and he asked me this question. He said, what do you think of my word? And I said, well, Father, I really love your word, but let's be honest, it doesn't really work. Well, he didn't respond to that other than to begin to reveal to me what was actually in the word. He began to pull it apart for me. He began to move. And I experienced power like I've never experienced before. I used to say to people that it was like, you're calling this kitty. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. And then this massive lion jumps through the window and you're like, ah! I remember being curled up on the floor like a fetus. And I'd told him years ago, I'd had a powerful visitation, and I had to stop it because I thought I was going to die. And I said, it's been like 20 years now or more, and I'm thinking, if this ever happens again, I don't care. I'm not stopping it. I do not want to stop it. And it was always my flesh that was in the way anyways, my carnality. And so it just all of a sudden, it's like this intensity comes. I'm curled up like a fetus on the floor going, oh my gosh, do I know what I'm asking for? It's like you've been asking for a drink because you've been in the desert so long, and all of a sudden you step under Niagara Falls. And it's like, oh. But it was so good, the intimacy, and it is good. It hasn't ended. It's just, I am now maturing to grow, to walk in his manifest presence and glory. That's the purpose of this thing. And to climb the ladder, to walk as Jesus walked, right? That's what we're called to do. And so in 4 near-death experiences, one of which I died and came back in 74. The second one, I'm going to talk about it tonight. Something a little bit different than we usually do, but to reveal how amazing and merciful the Father is in the midst of things. This one, I was dying too, but God healed me and brought me back again. And then I've had 2 since then, which are NDEs. They're not the same as these. So, yeah, God is so good though. So in 2004, we took a team to Costa Rica. There was two of us. There was me and Ivan Allen. We were pastoring together at the time. And he had married somebody from Costa Rica. And so he knew Costa Rica. And so it was like, we're going to go to Costa Rica and we're going to minister down there. So, okay. So we took a team of like 20. Don't ever do that. It's really crazy to have 20 people, and just to get vehicles to get people around is crazy, right? I mean, it was a blast. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of people. So there's 20 of us. We go to Costa Rica to a place called Rio Grande in the mountains, and to minister to them. And it was amazing. The Lord was just blasting people, and we were watching them enter into the love of God. We were seeing deliverance. It was the weirdest thing. You give somebody deliverance. You're speaking English. They're Spanish. They don't even know what you're talking about. Demons are leaving. It was wonderful. And the joy, people laughing on the floor, and a lot of prophetic ministry, right? Because that's what Ivan was known for, is a lot of prophetic. And so we were moving we had teams, and we were moving in the prophetic as well. Had an amazing time. It was just intense, seriously. And we were there doing that for about a week. I mean, so much so that the leaders of that over that area, not the pastors, we were staying with them, but there's leaders over the region. They were one night sitting at the back with their Bibles open, trying to figure out what's going on, because things were everywhere. People were all over the floors, and it was like, oh no, man, I think we're in doo-doo here. And at one point, the Lord had me go up to the front, and if you understand Costa Rican churches, you really don't step in and take charge. Well, the Lord prompted me. He was moving. And the pastor was about to shift gears and have some kids come up and sing or something. I can't remember what it was, but we were going off beam, right, into the program. And Joe Lanza, a friend of mine, he's there, and he's doing somewhat of the interpreting. And I go, hey, Joe, tell them no programs. We're going on with this. God is about to move. And Joe looks at me like, because he's from, I lost it, Nicaragua, which is right next door. And so it's like he understands the culture. And you should have seen his eyes. He looks at me like, oh my gosh, man, you don't do that. You don't do that. And I go, Joe, just tell him. So Joe turns and he tells him. And the guy's looking at me. He's a great guy. But he's looking at me because people just don't do that. And seriously, the Lord just came down on the place. And we were there hours and hours just in the glory. It was wonderful. We were having a really good time. So we got towards the end of the week, and we were coming back, doing ministry a couple other places, and then coming back there, staying with the people. They were beautiful, beautiful people. And we decided to take a break. And so we split up. A group of us went to the jungle to do zip lines in the bush. But I'm an ocean guy, right? I love water. So there was 9 of us that went to Hako Beach. And so we rented this car, a couple of cars actually. And by the way, afterwards, my buddy from California was with me, Mike, and he listed 21 things that God actually set up in preparation for this journey I was about to go on that I didn't know was about to happen. Like, he was kind of blown away by it. He was like watching it, standby watching it, and kind of tallied them because he was involved in it all. And so I'll give it to you like this. We went for 2 nights, 9 of us. We rented a car, 2 cars. I think we paid $40 a piece because it was a fair ways, a lot further than I thought. And anything takes a while there because you're going through all these twists and turns in the mountains, right? So there was 3 guys. There was Ken, Evan, and there was a guy named Kika at the last moment decided to go with us, and he's Spanish. He didn't even speak English, and he wanted to go with us. So he came, Mike and myself. And so we went. It's the next morning. After we stayed there one night, the next morning, we decided we were going to go to this place called Hermosa Beach. Hermosa is about 10 minutes down the road from Jaco, and you really shouldn't go there unless you know how to surf. But I didn't know any of that. None of us did. Mike was a surfer from California, so he said, well, we'll get some boards later. He, meanwhile, was at the time out booking some bikes because they were going to go ride in the hills and some motorcycles. And we were in the room. There was Evan, Kika, and Ken and myself. And I remember because Evan was sitting over by the fridge and he was eating cereal. And all of a sudden I had a visitation. Now, I've had this up to this point prior 3 times something like this happened. Twice when I was ODing on drugs, it happened to me. And once in my living room, I had a revelation where the other dimension opens right up in 1978. And so I looked over, and right behind Evan was, you could draw a line around the door where somebody was standing. I couldn't see them with my physical eyes, but I knew they were standing right there. Now, the thing about that is, it's a little like if you've been driving down the road in your car on a really hot day, and if you look down the road, you'll see what they call a heat wave. These waves.
Yeah, it's like a shimmer.
Yeah, that's what was going on, only it was in a complete, like a doorway. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, what the heck? I thought, is that an angel? That he must be coming to bless us, like he's really excited about what we're doing in Rio Grande and what's happening there. I don't know. I mean, I'm experiencing something, but I didn't know. So I walked over behind Evan where it was, and whack, I stepped into the glory by the fridge, and I was just wrecked. But he didn't say anything to me. He didn't say anything, but it stayed. Now, I guess in retrospect, he was there to heal me. He was just tipping me off, I guess. I don't really know to this day exactly what took place there, other than I'm in the glory. I know he's there, and this is just part of leaving. Yep. Mike comes back, and we leave to go to Hermosa Beach. And again, we're only going to go for a little while and then come back, and then they're going to get surfboards later. So we're going to do some body surfing, basically. So we get there, and we look, and there's this trailer with some surfboards leaning against it, but no people on the beach. One girl way down the beach, I see her suntanning. Otherwise, there's nobody. And the sand is black. It's like from volcanoes. So the sand's black. It's kind of cool. And, but I didn't clue in to this. And later, I'm talking to a guy later that's a surfer. And he says to me, "Are you kidding?" He goes, "There's been professional Olympic surfers killed there." And he goes, "Not just anybody goes there. You got to kind of know what you're doing. In the wintertime, the waves can get to 35 to 40 feet coming in there. It's got the worst rip tide, one of the worst rip tides in the world, where the edge drops off underneath. So then what happens is the water hits it, and there's this rip tide that takes place underneath the water, right? I don't know any of this, right? So we get in the water. There's about 3 or 4 foot waves. So we're having a great time, probably for 15, 20 minutes. These small waves are happening. And then 3 10-foot waves come in. And you don't realize how big that is until you're standing in front of it. It's a wall of water is what it is. And it's got a lot of power. It hit, and I remember Ken in the one, it's like he had sunglasses on, and they were gone. They're just gone. And Mike, he rode the one 30 to 40 feet on top of it. That's how far it carried him, right? It just like craziness. Then I got in that one. And then the next one comes, and I turned around to see where it was, and it broke right before me. And what that means is that it then curls and hits me, and it drives me down in the ocean, And I was told it's like a 5,000 pound car driving you straight into the bottom of the ocean. And that's what it did, right to the bottom. Now, our minds are kind of funny. What it did is it brought a memory back for me of when I was a kid, swimming in Lake Huron up in Goderich and diving too shallow, and you scratched your nose or something and went, oh shoot, right? And so that's what I thought happened. That I just went too low and hit the bottom, not realizing I went straight in. The riptide hit me and broke my neck, just like that. And so now I'm in the water, and I'm feeling like what's going on, and all of a sudden I feel like somebody's tapping me on the shoulder. I can feel this tapping on my shoulder, and I'm thinking, what the heck is that? Is that a fish? Is that an angel? What the heck is that? I'm wondering what's going on, right? I didn't realize that it was my own arm because I had no feeling from here down. I was dead. So I didn't know that my arm was basically going like this and hitting me, and I thought it was somebody else. And so at that point, I came to the top of the water. Mike was about 25 feet away from me, and I realized that I couldn't swim, that I was paralyzed, and I started to sink. And at that point, I called out, help me, right? But they didn't hear. Now, when I was sinking, everything went into slow motion, and I knew what that was from the car accident. I knew that I was passing through now. And it's funny, people, you wonder, geez, I'd never want to drown. Well, that thought hit me, but only for seconds. And then it was gone. And then I was oblivious to really anything, but everything slowing down, and that I was going home. It was all over. And so that's when I began to talk to the Lord. I call it when you begin to negotiate. Let's put it that way, because I've negotiated before. And so I started saying to him, Lord, I have a lot of things to do, like the prophetic words you've given me, what you've asked me to do. I don't want to come home before I fulfill what you've asked. I don't want to go and leave anything undone. And I said, and Sue and the kids, they still need me. I would like to be here for them. And I was thinking about that today. That's 16 years ago now. So Ashley would have been 14, right? Matt was around 16. Tasha would be about 20, 22, something like that. So they were young. They were still fairly young. And at that point, I guess Mike had looked over when I'd come up out of the water, and what he's seen kind of froze him in unbelief because my face is covered in blood when I hit the bottom, right? So my face is covered in blood, and he's just kind of standing there going like, what's going on? And he's kind of frozen. Then all of a sudden, he rushes through the water, and I guess reached out to grab my foot, and at that point, the next wave came and just sucked me right out of his hands, and I went under. And so then I'm under the water, and then he looks, and I begin to come up at a distance, and he see me floating face down in the water now. So they run over to me. Remember, I'd been praying to the Lord about letting me stay. I wanted to, finish what he'd sent me to do. And as they lifted me up out of the water, which is probably not a good thing to do, but they did, and it's quite a ways to the beach. Like it's kind of, I don't know, 50 yards. I don't know. It's a long ways till it gets deep because you could walk in because of the waves that come in there, I guess. And they lifted me up and they're carrying me. And I realize now that I'm a quadriplegic. And so now I'm discussing with the Lord, Lord, seriously, I need my arms and legs. I can't do this as a quadriplegic. No, of course you can. I'm again negotiating, right? That I don't want to do this. And so they get me to the beach and they start to pray for me. Now, later, Ken tells me that the Lord told him before he left Stratford that he'd see a creative miracle. He just didn't know that it was going to be me, right? And so they're praying for me. It seemed like a long time, but it was probably about 10 minutes or so. And all of a sudden, I began to feel something in my one leg. And then after a while, into the other leg, and then into my arm, then the other arm. And at first, it still felt like a time when I laid a motorcycle down going around a corner and shattered my arm. Felt a little like that. There was pain just shooting through my body as it was coming back in. And so then they finally, I'm feeling it all back again. And there was no permanent damage. They loaded me into a truck. And I said to them, let's go and put me in the pool back at the hotel, and I'll just wash off the sand and crap, and I don't need to go to the hospital. And Ken goes, oh, and I'm going to answer to Susan when I get home? No, not working like that. We're taking you to the clinic, right? So there's in Hako, there's what do they call it? A clinic, to this clinic. And we're going in the door, and a woman walks up, get this, walks in, speaks English. So there's everybody Spanish, man. She speaks English and says, you can trust this doctor. Turned around and left. Just like that. That's all that she did. You can trust her. And then leaves. I'm like, what is going on? You know? And then they begin to search for a neck brace. They searched all over the city of Hako and found one neck brace. And she got it for me. So then she puts me in a neck brace and says, you need to go to San Jose. And told me, don't move. Because she didn't know what damage there is. So don't move. And she goes, it would cost you about $600 American for an ambulance. But she said, just go back to the hotel, grab a mattress, and put it in the back of this vehicle we had, which is let me think of what that was. I'll come back to that. So I'm in this, it's a 4Runner. Toyota, is it? It makes the 4Runner. I'll find it. Yeah, Toyota 4Runner. And so that's what we do. Then she goes, don't worry, be happy. And I get in this thing. Now it's 2 hours and 20 minutes to the hospital through the mountains, right? 20 miles an hour in a lot of places due to traffic. And I just supposed to lay on my back on this mattress and don't move. So you're just kind of glancing out the side windows at what's going on for 2.5 hours. On the way, we avoided 3 accidents in San Jose. It was like craziness there. There's 3 million people live there in that city. And the thing about Costa Rica is stop signs are a suggestion, not an absolution. People just drive through them. It's not like here. So it's like, that's why you got to watch out for accidents, right? We get to this hospital. It's the state-of-the-art hospital called Bible Clinic, Biblica Clinica or whatever. It's the Bible Clinic is what it is. It's only for missionaries and rich people. Most people don't go there. That's what it's there for, that hospital. And the thing is, Kika had been in a really bad truck accident a few years earlier. And they, because of insurance and stuff, they took him to that hospital. So he knew right where he was going. That's why he came. Last minute, Kika comes. Because he needs to be there to get us to this place. We would have never found it. Ever. It's like crazy. I mean, we're out of the element, right? So we get there. They say to us, we need $1,000 American or we don't proceed. You can't get in. That's just the way it works, you know? And so Mike's here. He's an American and he has a credit card. He just hands him his credit card. Says, let's go. So in we go. I'm in the emergency area from 5:30 till 11 at night before I got in a room. That's how long it took. And in that time, they did, over the next 3 days, they did CAT scans, MRIs, X-rays, all these tests. And neurosurgeons were there because of the brain, and specialists. And the head neurosurgeon, he comes to me and he goes, through Mike knew some broken Spanish from California, right? He goes, no broken bones, no fractures, spinal cord's in place. There's a herniated disc between the C4 and the C5, and I don't understand. There's scar tissue. What that meant was when I died in the car accident in 78, the enemy had hit me in the same place as it hit me in the car accident, between C4 and C5. He says, your muscles and tendons in your neck, you must be like Superman. That's what he says. I said, no, but I know who is. His name's Jesus Christ. And that's why I'm here. And remember, I got full use of my arms and my legs. It's incredible. Oki, the pastor's wife, she'd said, don't go to Hako. We didn't really listen, right? And on the way to San Jose, on the way back from Hako, we were coming up this road by Rio Grande, and they slowed down, and there's Oki out in the road going, I told you not to go. So they actually got to see this whole thing go down, right? The church, like through her, they knew all about this, what had happened, and God was setting them up as well. So everything we think is always black and white. You're healed, you're not healed. But sometimes it's more about obedience to Christ and what he's doing, and that's walking it out. We may not like it, but it's walking it out, right? So when I'm in there for 3 days, I prayed for missionaries, people with cancer, and language teams that were all staying in that hospital for some reason or another. I got to minister to them. And I realized that God is the journey. He takes us on it. It's not where I would have chosen to go, but it's the journey I took. The doctors were shocked, and in 3 days I walked away. Went in on a Tuesday, went out on a Friday. Now, one of the things I've always really not liked, right, was people that exaggerate, especially evangelists, right? They think God needs help. He really doesn't need any help. And so I got a history of knowing about some of that stuff, but we won't go into that today, right? It's not that important at the moment, other than to say that if God heals somebody, God heals somebody. I can trust him. So I asked a nurse who worked in a trauma unit previously in her life. I said, so is it possible that I got hit, boom, and then in that 10 minutes, the pressure comes off and all my circulation came back? And she said, no, it's a 6-month minimum. And really, by what you've told me, you had been paralyzed. The swelling does the damage. It would have been done. And so she goes, I believe God healed you. That was asking somebody that had worked with trauma, these kind of neck injuries, and seen all this stuff in a hospital. Then when I came to Stratford General and I had to go in and give them my x-rays and stuff, so they had the history, the guy comes out to me and says, dude, he goes, you should be in a halo. And what he meant is one of those things with the pins in holding you in place, right? And when I looked at the x-rays, and he goes, I don't understand. And so God had intervened in this whole scenario for me, right? So when I got out, and it's quite the trip in 3 days, I spoke on the Saturday night back at this church in Rio Grande. People were crying and praying there were salvations, there were healings, there was deliverance. And the only guy with really any unbelief would have been me, because I remember this one person had a cast and their arm had been busted, and I prayed for them, and now they're saying it's healed. And I said, no, no, you don't understand. They said, no, you don't understand. The pain's all gone. They're healed. See, because they seen me prior, then they heard about what happened in Hako, and now their faith is through the roof. They hear me, they see me come back. So there was a lady in the one meeting. She came from a church of 10,000 in San Jose, and she at night was having dreams, and she was terrified because a spirit of murder was trying to kill her. And she said to me, "You have the spirit of life," and God delivered her like that. Just like that, she was free. I mean, these were the kind of things that were happening. And it wasn't because of me or my great faith, I got to tell you. Mike had sent me this, and this is a few of the things that happened, just to give you a scenario. Mike had rented a Jeep, and when he went to pick up the Jeep battery wouldn't work. The thing wasn't working. So the guy that rented the vehicles had to give him his, because he'd already paid for it. So he gives him a Toyota 4Runner. And it's got a big back where I was able to lay down on this mattress from the hotel. Kika came, remember? I told you he had an accident. He's from the city, had 3 million in it. So it's a little tricky to get around if you don't know where the heck you're going. And again, stop signs being a suggestion. It's a little freaky. That's why, you know. The neck brace, one in Hako. Mike, all his clothes were in the laundry. And that morning when we left, just as we came over to the hotel to get the mattress, this girl that was on the team bought him a new shirt, and she had the shirt standing, said, "Hey, I bought you this shirt." So he was able to put this clean shirt on to go with me to San Jose. I get there, and guess what? Ivan and Timo are in San Jose when this all goes down. They are already in that city, which is crazy. And so Ivan's able to connect with his wife, and then get a hold of Susan and tell her what's going down. And she felt pretty helpless being here and not able to do anything and not knowing what had happened yet. It was still in the process. The mattress fit the truck. When we got to the parking lot, it was locked up, but Kika got us into it. Being Spanish again, he just goes and starts speaking to this guy. And Mike had 10,000 colones in his pocket, which is $20 American. Boom, they put us into the lot. One of the nice things that happened is that when we're in the hospital for 3 days, Mike stays with me. He's got like a bed in the one end of the room. He's out getting all different kinds of food every day, and he brings it in. So we're like testing food from everywhere. So that was a wonderful time. One of the things that was really good is I never usually get insurance when I travel. That's like, so what, you're not gone that long. So just before I left, I thought I should get some insurance. Probably was Susan saying, "John, you better get some insurance." Let's be honest. $7,000 for 3 days. Those MRIs, all that stuff, it wasn't cheap. I had to put it on Mike's credit card and then get it reimbursed by the insurance company for $24. That was the best $24 I ever spent, I got to tell you. So if you're traveling, $24, 7,000, it's a good deal, right? So then I was preaching 3 days later. Like I said, it's crazy. And the craziest thing is, when I got back to Stratford, Sue was at Joe and Sue Lanz's house at the back of the house. And I came in a van. I'll never forget this. And I got out of the van. And as I got out of the van, it was like I was stepping back into this world. And it was a gift. It's like I was between two worlds, this world and heaven, the spiritual world. And I was moving back slowly into this one. And it was the weirdest feeling. It's almost like this wasn't supposed to happen. This was not supposed to happen. And God's mercy he let me stay once again. And because he did that, right, here I was, walking towards Susan, like phasing in, coming back. It was the wildest experience ever. You know, God is so good. I mean, now it's a story 16 years later, right? But I got to tell you, if you live through one of those things, it is like unreal. The divine hand of God through all those things, and Mike counted 21 of them. Just the divine hand of God, His mercy. That angel standing in the 10 minutes before we're going to Hermosa, he shows up. I'm thinking it's because he's really happy about what's going on in Rio Grande. Meaning he's going, dude, what are you doing? I'm gonna have to fix you in a few minutes. You know, he's all ready to go to the beach and heal me. You know, it's just amazing. Presence of Father, Abba Daddy, right?
Yeah.
You know. So John Arnott had this dream, Corey. Shortly after that led to me, they were playing in the waves at the beach, and when he got pushed over, and he said, when he got up, he looked. And there was a huge wall of water coming straight for him. And he said, oh no, Carol, we're dead. Now, I realize that the funny thing about, they say about somebody, the prophet coming and sharing a message, but the thing is, the prophet's the message, not what he says, it's his life. And I realized in that experience that God was showing me, don't turn your back on the glory when it starts to come this time. See, John was in a great move in 94, but God had warned him. The next wave's coming is like the one that hit me, right? Don't turn your back on it, right? Because God's going to move in power like we've never seen him move before, and not necessarily the way we think he will. That's our problem, is we always look backwards to try to go forwards. It's kind of a crazy thing, isn't it? Looking back at Azusa, Azusa was amazing. Amazing. But it's not compared. The latter rain is greater. God's going to move. Rick Joyner, he had in the 90s, early 90s, had a vision of a man not prepared. And he was in the hospital from the first wave. But he was looking out the window at the sea, waxing a huge surfboard, getting ready for the next bigger wave to come. You see, these are just prophetic pictures of a great wave. When you come to that place, like I said, the voices stop. You, at that moment, none of it mattered. Only the Lord, Jesus, and the loved ones in your life. That's all that was in my mind, was my wife, my children, and my Lord, Jesus, who I was before. That's all. The rest of it is gone. It didn't matter what I was wearing. It didn't matter what car I drove. It did not matter. It was over. And that's happened to me now 4 times, not to mention. We were never called to merely go to heaven. We were called to intimacy. We were called to be redeemed and then to redeem for redemption. Our life is to flourish with his life, which is that Zoe life that we've talked about, which is indestructible, incorruptible. That's what's inside of us. Zoe, the resurrection life, right? To be converted merely to maintain and hold on until the end was never God's intention. It's something that we've been subtly brought into because we've not understood spirituality and what it was like for the early apostles, the desert fathers, the mystics, those that pressed into intimacy and lived in a whole different way. It's like, I was asked this question the other day. I was asked about Gnostics because I'd made a comment from the book of Thomas. And it's like this. To give you an example, there were a lot of different sects of Gnostics in that time, in the early church. Today, if we were to write a book for 100 years from today about Western Christianity, we're not going to tie us all into Mormonism. Yet Mormons are a Christian cult, meaning we would call them a cult, meaning that they have deceptions. We all probably do, but because we haven't arrived. Otherwise, we'd be doing a lot different than we are. But Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're what they would call themselves Christians. So all I'm saying is, if we were to define what is Western Christianity in a book, and we are looking back, dwelling in me, that will quicken me, do I have more faith in the devil to deceive me or the Spirit of God to lead me? And if I believe the Spirit of God, like he said to me, remember I told you in 2005, John, can you once again believe me as a little child? And that means I must trust him. And so we just must learn what this is all about. And what we're doing is just trying to show that relational information will help us, but it can also imprison us. Because if we get stuck in our heads in the intellect, you can be like a philosopher all day, but like Emerson said, Farrell, there's no life in it. There's no life in the light, in that light. But there's life in Christ. And so when we begin, it's to bring us to him, and then he begins to unveil. If I don't get that, then when I go to bondservant, guess what I get? You get a slave, you get somebody that's in legalism, and they want to, it's what it's called as an orphan spirit. And they want to put everybody under this thing that we must serve God and we must, do it, everything for God, and we're enslaved to God, and you must be obedient, and if you're not obedient, you're going to go to hell and all this stuff. Well, I guess, dude, you missed one step. I told them that the other revivals in the past, even the biggest ones we can think of, they were his fragrance as he passed by. So what will it look like when he enters the room and his manifest presence is there? We call it habitation. Well, again, in the light of truth, he always is and always was and always will be. It's the unveiling of that truth.